Hey guys, welcome to Terrifying Tales. In this video we are going to represent you a story about I Wanted You First, a what the f*** novella. Work is insufferable. I am always on the verge of quitting. Mix that with two men who I am pretty sure both have the hots for me and wouldn't he mind sharing. A bestie who has her nose in all the wrong places, an ex who won't he leave well enough alone, and a few choice coworkers out to get me. As if that's not enough, my company's success seems to have sinister roots in some seriously shady business, and is indirectly tied to my boss' favorite salt candle that she protects like Gollum protected his precious. Unfortunately, I think it is following me. Yes, the damn candle. Welcome to one of the what the fuck novellas. This story will not make sense. It isn't supposed to make sense. It is going to take you on a really wild ride and leave you with a what the fuck. It's going to be wonky, weird, and going to involve a lot of cliches and pet names. There is also no happy ending. It isn't sad either. It just isn't an ending. If you still want to subject yourself to it, by all means, at your own risk. Neon lights flashed in rapid, asynchronous rhythm as pleasurable shouts and screams filtered through the dimly lit club. Smells of sweat and sex filled the air, the general carefree ambiance mixing with the underlying lust and desire on everyone's minds. Serenity vainly tried tugging me back towards the dance floor, the place I had just escaped from, feeling like I had just come up for air from a 20-ft dive, but without the experience of a trained diver. Serenity was made for places like this, the constant sounds and smells swirling around us, calling out to the patrons like a siren. It made me highly uncomfortable, and I felt largely out of place, especially with the bright turquoise wrap dress she had squeezed me into, paired with the skimpiest black heels she could find. It wasn't that I looked bad. I just felt a whole lot more comfortable, donning my oversized exotic frumpy sweaters and leggings, a coffee cup clutched in one hand, a book in the other, and a set of thick-rimmed glasses sliding down my nose as I curled up in my favorite pumpkin orange armchair, one that Serenity absolutely despised. It was comfortable, safe. Twisting out of her grip, I pushed her back in the direction she came, hoping she'd leave me to my own devices for the rest of the night. She didn't seem to notice my discomfort, or the fact that I was nearly drunk as she disappeared into the crowd. Serenity's enthusiasm was usually contagious, so I suffered through a smile before turning back to the bar and signaling the bartender for another shot of tequila. Was this 4 or 5, maybe 6? The bartender smirked at me, sliding a small of pretzels my way as well. We weren't strangers to this club, and he knew I tended to overdrink. Sweet of him to notice. Unnecessary, though. This would be my last shot. That is what you told yourself an hour ago. I grimaced to myself, eyes wandering as they fell onto Serenity, watching as she shimmied her way between two men. Pretty sure they were together, together, but that didn't stop her from inserting herself into the situation. 2 seconds later, hands and lips were everywhere, hips grinding on each other, and I just had to settle for a whatever works, I guess, attitude. Serenity had claimed that her day had been motherfucking awful and needed to de-stress. I should have known that meant skimpy dresses, cheap alcohol, and partying at the hottest strip bar in town. Striptease. Not original in the slightest. Even in the dimly lit light, I could make out the stage and cages littered around the outer walls, nearly naked men shaking their asses. No. My scene. This would never be my scene. I was here for my girl, although her idea of a bad day consisted of not enough coffee or breaking a newly manicured nail. If she only knew that her days paled to mine in comparison. I swear we didn't work at the same place sometimes, what with the amount of shit she got away with and how much shit I dealt with. The small pharmaceutical office I had given my life up for, I am being dramatic, but it took every ounce of my time was a piece of shit. Employee morale was low, tensions were high, and I was always dealt the worst hand. My newest project, procuring some drug that was foreign to me, was derailing hard. I didn't even understand what the drug did. I could pronounce it if I tried. I kind of felt like I was one of those people working for an oil company, destroying wildlife, but at the same time moseying through life in BMWs, fancy parties, and handbags worth a peasant's salary. I scoffed at the image. I wasn't high on life and I was barely making rent, supporting myself in the 2-bedroom apartment I shared with Serenity, but it was levels higher than where I had been a year ago. Beggars could be choosers and all that shit, right? Still, I didn't want to be here any longer. Serenity's pity party, if it could even be called that, had ended the moment she had started fussing over my makeup. I didn't even know what part of her day had stressed her out, or if I was stressing her out. It was also Tuesday, and while she didn't have much to do tomorrow, I had a presentation on Friday that I was woefully unprepared for. She didn't need rescuing, not the kind that I could provide anyway. The new gaggle of guys surrounding her as she danced the night away, explaining just as much. She easily had her pick of the litter. And she would pick one, or two, or however many. And that's when my $200 canceling headphones would become the best damn purchase I had ever made in my entire life. There was, however, always a silver lining to the shit swirling around in my life. My phone buzzed impatiently in the clutch I had stuffed it into. When I removed it and stared at the pop-up, I could hide the genuine smile spreading across my lips. That lining, Cadden, you not drinking yourself into a stupor, are you? I giggled to myself, cutting it short by stuffing a few pretzels into my mouth. No one needed to know how hot and bothered I was over this man. He was one of 3 out-of-this-world gorgeous men that worked at our office. Serenity called them the Hottie Brigade, and the only one that I had a hard time reading. There had been a lot of flirtatious push and pull between the sex-on-legs god walking around the halls, but nothing ever materialized. Cade wasn't just the average hottie, though. Sporting his messy chocolate strands paired with the shapely shaved sides, something over 6 feet height, and a smile that made my panties wet. He was abnormally sweet and considerate of the women in the office. He never ogled. He never made inappropriate jokes, and for some goddamn reason, he always seemed to soothe whatever worry popped up in my head. Like now, Cade made me feel seen, and it was both an enlightening and an entirely new feeling. My last boyfriend had been a dick. I was his sex toy when he got home. I was torn between wanting to take things farther with Cade and wanting to put as much distance between us as I could physically endure. I had learned my lessons about dating at work. I wouldn't fall for it again. Having to see my ex on the daily was torture enough. Besides, Cade had been front and center for my latest almost breakdown, and I just didn't know how to handle vulnerability in front of a man that I sorta half liked. Edith, our cunt of a boss and the president's wife, so completely untouchable, had been all over my ass about the new project again. I had no updates for her. Scratch that. I had plenty of updates for her, but nothing that I cared to share. Nothing that wouldn't get my ass fired. It wasn't even my project. The responsibilities had just fallen to M. And I hadn't shoved them off onto another poor soul. Maybe I was just a masochist. Moments later, after retreating to my office, Cade had burst in like a guardian angel, sporting some kind of German chocolate and a latte with origins that he wouldn't reveal. I tried to refuse the gesture, but he said that it made him feel needed. Pretty sure that was just a line, and he was full of shit. But it did warm my heart when he then proceeded to spout shit that was happening around the office. Me, number out with Serenity. I didn't elaborate. I wasn't sure how he would take to the fact that I spent my free time with my girl at striptease. Then again, he might have liked that better than the version of me that was actually true. Or neither of them. To be honest, all the flirting might have just been harmless fun, and I was letting it get to my head. I was no more special than any of the other women in the office. The only difference was that I didn't dress like I wanted to be bent over someone's desk and fuck. Kid within an inch of my life. I was safe. Cadden, good for you. Make sure she doesn't get too crazy. I cracked a cheesy grin, shaking my head and responding immediately. Me, couldn't stop her if I tried. 3 little bubbles popped up and began waving as Cade typed his response. Cadden, you sure you okay though? I didn't answer. Would it even make a difference? Cade kept trying to offer a shoulder for me to cry on or lean on. But I didn't want him for comfort. Well, I did. Just not in that way. I was about to shove my phone back into my clutch before his next reply slipped through. Cadden, got some stuff to do, but I'll be around if you need someone to talk to, alright? His care warmed my dead heart a little, but not enough to make me return to the dance floor and forget about my piling worries. I signaled the bartender again, and another tequila shot was slid my way. I knew I'd pay for it in the morning, but I wanted to forget for a moment that I was a total fuck-up of a woman. Mom ha. He always told me that I wouldn't make it on merit alone, that I needed connections and shit to make it in life. I didn't agree with her assessment, but then again, if I had a few people in the right seats, I would have been in medical school rather than slumming it in a sleazy pharma office and selling products that probably made the world a worse place. I knocked back the shot, my head starting to swim with the alcohol coursing through my system. I shook off the advance of some drunken guy to my right, which he then moved onto a girl not even 2 paces from my seat. Fucker. My watch read 12:43 a.m., signaling yet again that I had no business being out here wasting my life away. I caught sight of Serenity still dancing in those stilettos, amazed and a little jealous how she hadn't come up for air yet. Her lips locked onto some dude's neck as she swayed, sandwiched between 3 hunks, Hands were still everywhere, lips attached to flushed skin, and clothes in complete disarray. I felt heat pool between my legs as I clamped my thighs together. I hadn't been touched like that in a fucking long time, and I was horny as shit, but there was no way in hell that I'd let a stranger touch me like that. A deep breath flew from my lips as I took one last look around the club, surveying the debauchery and chaos skyrocket. Time to go, I guess. I slid off the chair after paying my tab, but not before my eyes snagged on one of the newest dancers gliding across the marble stage. I recognized those swaying hips, that delicious frame, and the fake customer service smile that was plastered onto his face. I choked, my breath catching in my throat. Cade, the bartender, tapped my shoulder over the bar, but I didn't turn. You like the eye candy, huh? He has been working for us like 8 years. He is amazing. Just watch. Watching. I could take my damn eyes off of him. He was completely naked except for a fluorescent Speedo that did nothing to hide his gifted package. Glistening, rippling muscles met my eyes as he gyrated his hips in a silent dance, awarding his audience with the most sensual journey I had seen. I could get past the smile, though. It was the fake one that he used with the high rollers at work, the one he paraded around when he was fed up with everyone as shit. It was gorgeous, but it wasn't genuine. Still, his deep brown eyes flashed with excitement as he moved flawlessly across the stage. He was a completely different person on that platform, free, unrestrained, happy. A few more minutes could hurt, right? I had so many questions. I stilled, trying to figure out how to bring it up tomorrow. Or at all. We were just flirting around and he was nice at work. But we weren't at work, and this had nothing to do with work. Could I even talk about it? Was it going to be weird? I choked again, heat rising to my cheeks when I realized that bringing it up tomorrow would be my worst nightmare. Cade's eyes had locked on my form, and the change in expression on his face was evident, at least to me. The way his eyes lit up and smile widened reminded me of the way he looked at me at work when he thought I wasn't looking. Fuck. My heart fluttered as dirty thoughts bombarded my mind. I wanted those massive hands roaming my bare skin. I wanted to feel him pressed up against me. I wanted to run my tongue along his muscles, every last one of them. I wanted to see the magic in his Speedo for all it was worth. I swallowed an embarrassing moan watching Cade dance for me. It was just the two of us in my eyes until my phone ringing shattered the spell. With a scowl I whipped it out. Whoever was calling this late had better have a damn good reason. What? I whisper-yelled into the phone as I stomped out of the club into the cool air. Heated and turned on, I tried to forget the tease back in the club as a gruff voice came through the earpiece. We here. I frowned and glanced at the number. Oh, it was the shippers, the ones who had the damn product for my presentation. But where was here? I didn't have to ask as the gruff voice came through again. At the office. You said you needed the supplies ASAP. I had said that 2 weeks ago. And the company's manager said they were doing everything they could to make sure that we received it before launch. I remember something about a tracking number and expedited shipping, but neither of those things had happened. I was also pretty sure FedEx didn't deliver in the middle of the night. There was also the little problem that I hadn't given out my number recently. Edith, just get here so we can offload this shit, okay? I froze at the name. My fucking boss had pushed her work into my lap again. She had struck some deal with someone to get the product, and then thrown me under the bus to handle it. A brisk night breeze rushed past me, and I shivered. I hadn't dressed for the October weather, but it was hardly the time to worry about the lack of one of my favorite sweaters. Shit was about to hit the fan again. Excuse me, you at the office right now? A few muffled curse came through, and then look, just offload the damn truck. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I could tell that Edith wasn't their favorite person, but I'd be damned if I was stuck with those boxes looking like a hooker in the middle of the night. Please don't leave. I am on my way. I hoped they could hear the desperation in my voice and the fact that I was not Edith as I ordered an Uber. 2 minutes out. A small worry popped into my head that I had left Serenity alone in the club, but knew that she'd make it home safe. Striptease was familiar territory, and the bouncers were superb at their job. I ripped off my heels, my aching feet screaming in relief as I hopped into the Uber backseat, still very much on the phone. We've been driving for over 20 hours, Edith. I gritted my teeth and squeezed my clutch tightly in the other hand to relieve my frustration. I am Rose, Edith. It doesn't matter. The back S open. We'll come get it in the morning. Realization flooded through me. There was going to be no sleep tonight, was there? Tears threatened to unleash themselves, but I blinked hurriedly to keep my composure together. I was just shy of my 31st birthday, in the back of an Uber, wrapped in a dress that spoke of filthy things. I was not going to fall apart. Not yet. I hung up, knowing that no amount of pleading and whining would make them stay any longer. This was not a new occurrence, Edith starting something that I then had to finish. It didn't help that I always finished it too. I think I made it easier for people to walk all over me at the office because I gave in too easily. But when my Uber pulled alongside the back entrance and my eyes landed on the 15-feet box truck that had been all but discarded in the parking lot, I sincerely wished I had more of a backbone. Here goes nothing. I'd been out here for nearly an hour, lugging boxes through the back of the office and into the stockroom, more like dragging. Sweat was pouring down my back, my hair plastered to my face, my fingers raw on the cardboard, and my feet aching as I scooted across the gravel. I met my share of rocks on the way into the office. The wrap dress kept riding up my hips, and it took all my self-control not to rip it off and continue working with my tits out in the night air. Edith's favorite salt candle, the ones that came from those weird spiritual witch readers that promised good life and fortune, had been staring me in the face when I unlocked the stockroom. I wasn't even sure how it got there. It was oddly shaped, almost as if it had just been chopped off a larger part and then branded as a sellable product. It was hideous and didn't fit any of the decor of the office, but it was my boss' most prized possession. Like she actually hoarded it in her office, and I caught her rubbing it like a fucking genie lamp more than once. But for some reason over the past couple of weeks, I'd seen it pop up in the most random places. Maybe it had a camera, but that seemed highly illegal and a little too evil for Edith. She was a bitch, but she wasn't the devil. I managed a few small breaths, glad at my progress despite having sorely underestimated how long this was going to take. I checked my phone for any new messages, mainly from Cade with an explanation for why he had ended up on stage, or why he had kept it from me, or why I bit the inside of my cheek, trying to refocus, boxes first, then dirty thoughts. I shuffled my way back through the door, feeling the drop in temperature inside the office. An eerie shiver ran down my back, but I attributed it to the dried sweat. I still believed in ghosts and demons and the underworld, and really didn't need to be thinking about that in the dark and empty office. Hence the reason why all the goddamn lights were on now. You know, to ward off the shadows. I wasn't chancing any kind of possession tonight, or any night. I pulled another box from the truck, stuck both hands into the handle, and began dragging it backward. It was the fastest I could do in this stupid wrap dress that Serenity would kill me for if I ripped it. Still, it did nothing to cover my ass or the semi-granny panties I was sporting tonight. The box caught on a rock, and I stumbled back into something hard. I straightened, my eyes wide. This is how I die, isn't it? Two firm hands gripped my arms and spun me around. Oh, this is worse. Jonah motherfucking Martin, hottie number 2. The tattooed pierced bad boy of our office, hardened by a short stint in the military. He was the quietest of the hottie brigade, always brooding and pensive, but still, every bit filled out. Story has it that he helped the president out with some shit and then ended up working as security. When Edith found out about his technical background, she basically handed him the keys to the surveillance room. He pulled off the terrifyingly handsome bit with perfection as he towered over me, his eyes dark. He seemed pissed, and of course, I thought that was hot, and heat traveled straight between my legs as the thought of where I wanted those hands settled into my head. Horny jail. I needed horny jail. What do you think you redoing? He hissed at me, his voice deep and husky as if he had just woken up. He probably had. His dark ribbed tank, not exactly the attire for this kind of weather. But it showed off all his tattoos, many that I wanted to trace with my fingers, or my tongue, maybe both. His fingers squeezed into my bare arms, and it took every ounce of self-control I had not to gasp with pleasure. Trying to play it cool, I just cocked my head to the side and shrugged as if being out here all alone in the wee hours of a Wednesday morning was supposed to be normal. Unloading a truck, dressed like that. I managed to meet his eyes, but they weren't so half-lidded and dreamy anymore. There was heat pooling in his dark irises as he squeezed a little harder before letting go altogether. I was definitely messed up in the head for the fact that I enjoyed the handprints he had left on my flesh. I followed his eyes as they ran along the contours of my bare feet and wild hair. I just shot him a small smile, hoping that he wasn't going to distract me too long. There was still half a truck and I needed at least a few hours of sleep if I was going to be presentable at 8 a.m. His shoulders finally relaxed and he leaned back, his eyes still roaming my body. Hot stuff. You can't be doing that kind of work, dressed like that. Right, that fucking nickname. He always called me that when we were alone. I thought it was in jest at first, some kind of joke about my favorite attire. Then I realized that he actually thought I was hot, and decided to ignore it, because why would this fucking military god be into me? It was already strange enough that Cadden was flirting with me. But two of them, not possible. I shrugged again. I didn't have anything else. If I had thought to run home and change out of this contraption, I would have. I hated wearing things like this in general, but it also made me feel a bit exposed. My bathing suits covered more than this. Not because of that, his voice drawled out the words. It turns a man on to know how strong a woman is, and that a little bit of sweat won't deter her. I sucked my bottom lip in a horrified gasp. I had never felt more naked in my entire life, heat rising to my cheeks again. I put 3 paces between us, nearly tripping over my box in the process. How did you even know I was here? The cold was beginning to seep through my skin again, and I fought the urge to rub my hands along my arms. He chuckled, his chest rippling with the sound. Security, remember, got an alert that people were hanging about, only to see this woman dragging materials around like they didn't weigh anything. I knew he was full of shit because I was definitely struggling and had taken way more breaks than necessary. Granted, I was barefoot, but still. Look, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to tell Jonah. We didn't cross paths much at work, but when we did, few words passed between us, mostly just knowing stares, and a few brief touches here and there that had me locking myself in my office to get my breathing under control. I came to help, not chastise. Dick move for Edith. I frowned, hating how Jonah knew that Edith was out to get me. This is why I didn't date at work. All my problems were laid bare for these men. Strangely, they didn't seem to mind. Jonah shoved something into my chest, and I clutched at the cloth as he sat me down on the box. I blinked a few times before I realized he had grabbed a pair of pants and shoes for me to wear. They were much smaller than his, and I wondered if he had a lady at home that he had stolen these from. They didn't smell like a woman but they my sister. She left him last time she came over. Just put them on. It'll make this faster. I could argue with that logic as I stuffed my legs into the pants, hiking my dress up in the process. I could feel his heated gaze on my back as I slipped on the shoes as well, but didn't address it. The clothes were still a bit as I gathered my hair into a makeshift ponytail, enjoying the cool breeze against my neck. 20 minutes later, and I was trying to catch my breath in the stockroom. Jonah's strength put my ass to shame, but I was thankful for his help. Rays of light were beginning to peek through the clouds, and I wasn't going to be caught dead when Edith showed up. She had an uncanny ability to show up at the crack of dawn for who knew what reason. Most bosses would praise me for my dedication. She would have found a way to turn this into a train wreck without letting me go home for a change of clothes. Shudder. I glanced up, catching Jonah staring at me again. He had been shooting me hurried glances for a while, and I was wondering if I was supposed to notice or keep pretending that his gaze didn't make me hot. My panties were soaked with the culmination of Cade's dirty dancing and Jonah's endless tattoos and heated stares. His hands found my waist, his fingers digging in as he drew me flush against his chest. He stared down at me, eyes roaming my flushed face. I could imagine what I looked like right now, my makeup probably in as much disarray as the rest of me. But there wasn't disgust in his eyes, just desire. His lips brushed against mine in a teasing gesture and I grunted at him. Totally an unsexy thing to do, but fuck. Jonah really knew how to make a woman want something. I gripped at his tank. Why do you keep toying with me? Should I have been here, at this moment, in the stockroom trying to start something? Fuck no, was I going to anyway because I had been on edge all night and really needed to be touched as if it was the only thing keeping me from death. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Bingo. Right on the money. I tried to inch forward, to close the distance between us, but Jonah's firm grip on my waist prevented that. Because I already lost someone once and I am not really keen on having it happen again. Thoughts raced through my head, fighting for release on my tongue. I bit them back. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't going anywhere, that nothing was going to happen to me, that I was a safe choice. But I had no idea the horrors he had experienced, and I felt it would be a bit insensitive, not to mention that I was literally not going to date someone I worked with. Everyone knew about my ex and how he had cheated on me within a few months. Jonah had been there when I find out about Linda. Apparently, I was the other woman, and pitching a fit because I wasn't grateful enough to be graced with the time I did have with him was not the acceptable answer to his admission. Well, fuck him. I guess it's good that I don't date coworkers after what happened. He nodded. I nodded. We were both in agreement. Unfortunately, the tension grew between our tangled embrace as I tightened my grip on his shirt, and his hand slid farther around my waist and I arched my back into his touch. Pulling away was the farthest thing from my mind, even more so when I noticed him clench his jaw and heard the words, under his breath, "Aw, fuck it. YOLO and all that shit, right?" Our lips smashed together in a hungry, passionate mess, lighting up my core. I moaned into the kiss, giving him untethered access, his tongue slipping into my mouth as it danced lustfully with mine. I arched farther against him as his hand slid down to my ass, one hand sliding even farther to my thigh and wrapping it around his waist. A whine permeated the air at the new position. I could feel everything with my thighs spread like this, my core clenching down on the thought of what I wanted to fill it. His bulge swelled against my inner thigh, pressing against my clit as I hungrily rocked against it for some relief. It was so not fair how gifted these men were. My hands traveled up to his shoulders as he thrust back against me, hoisting me up and setting me on a hard surface. My nipples pebbled against the dress, arching towards him, begging for release. As if he could read my thoughts, his hand dipped between us and roughly ripped my clothing to my waist, the cool air hardening my nipples instantly. I cried out against him as his large thumb flicked over one of them, sending rippling sensations straight down to my core. I mewed at his touch, rocking against him again. He tore his lips from mine, a brief glance shooting between us before those sinful lips devoured my bare nipple. "Ah, fucking sweet Jesus," he grunted in response as he nipped and tugged at the temptation, massaging the flesh with his hand. His other arm wrapped around my waist, my neglected tit dragging across his rib tank. I was dripping with the need to be filled as I grasped at him, hoping he could read me again. I needed him. All of him inside me. Right the fuck now. But instead of letting me yank down his sweat so he could sink into my heat, he pulled away. Hurried breaths and unspoken thoughts settled between us. I wanted to continue. Jonah wanted to stop. I knew it was too good to be true. "How much did you have to drink?" I groaned and dropped my gaze. "John." I was still between my legs, plastered against my chest, tits on full display as my dress hung around my waist. But he felt distant now. He squeezed a little harder, and I huffed like a goddamn child. Just a few shots. I was lying through my teeth, and I am pretty sure he could tell. But it wasn't tea as if I hadn't just sweat out most of it. He took a long, deep breath before pulling my dress back up and taking a step back. Then I wouldn't be a gentleman if we continued. The righteous card, really? How the fuck had I gotten saddled with hotties that had hearts? Why could I get the dumb jock types that stuck their dicks in anything and everything? Right. I had. And I had been the other woman. It still kind of stung. I shimmied off the surface, straightening my dress and then staring at him with the most pleading expression I could muster. "I am not drunk, Jonah." He nodded, "Sure, but I am not spending our first night in the stockroom of a job we both despise, you hazy from a night of dancing. I want you to scream." I could see the desire in his pants, his bulge almost if not equally as impressive as Kate's. It just wasn't fair. You think I wouldn't do this if I was totally sober? It was a blanket statement, one that didn't entirely warrant a response. But as I read into it, I realized that that's exactly why Jonah wasn't continuing. He wasn't an idiot, and he knew that I wasn't going to jump him in the stockroom the first chance I got. We both had our reservations, and I had only dropped my guard because I was horny, miserable, and tipsy. He shrugged, stuffing his idle hands into his pockets. "You might have a different viewpoint on it tomorrow." Mentally, I shook my fists at him. Once again, you were going to leave me with lady blue balls. Another statement that wasn't entirely meant for him. Me and my good old vibrator were going to have a lot of fun in the next few hours. So righteous. I should be thanking you, shouldn't I? Fuck, I want to hate you so bad. I stalked outside, stomping along in the oversized shoes, heels, and clutch stashed in my hands. I was over this shit. The truck was unloaded. I was horny. And I needed some fucking sleep before I came back to grace this place with my presence. My eyes snagged on the fucking salt candle in an entirely different place than it had been a few hours ago. I tried hard not to think about that, but it was itching at the back of my mind. A haunted candle? Fuck that. Jonah caught me around the waist, pulling me back against his chest. I wanted to squirm away, but I could already feel his package against the small of my back, and I just really didn't want to feel any more high-strung than I already was. And where do you think you were going? Home to bed? Because you want to fuck me. I had never wished to have had less alcohol than right now. Come on, I'll drive you. I huffed again and fell limp in his arms until he let me go. You don't need to. It's just a few blocks over. Then I'll walk you. He was already following me as I started my short, uneventful journey. I could feel him staring, itching to smooth over the past hour's events. But it wouldn't just go away. And the horror of tomorrow was already looming over me. I was going to regret it when I went into the office. My cheeks bright red in embarrassment as I tried to avoid both Cadden and Jonah the entire day. It wouldn't work. They always fucking found me. And then toyed with me. A sick part of me loved it. I whipped around as we rounded the last block, awkwardly pointing to the building door and then mustering up a wave. His lips curved up a little, his version of a smile. It was barely there, but I knew a genuine emotion when I saw one. Hot stuff. Don't think I wouldn't want to. Just not like this. Jonah threw me a wink full of promises. Take care of yourself. I wasn't entirely sure if he meant to give that a double meaning based on what I was about to rush upstairs and do, but I threw him 2 middle fingers before turning my back to him. Life wasn't supposed to be this calm. Placated, was it? Now where was that goddamn vibrator? Sleep. Lots of it. But first I needed to be stuffed while imaging Jonah pumping inside of me with reckless abandon. Or Cade, or maybe both. It didn't fucking matter at this point. I just needed release. Tomorrow was going to be a fucking shit show. Whereas the hottie brigade, not even 5 minutes after settling in my seat, Serenity had popped over into my office like a goddamn child, eyes bright and entirely too wide for this time of the morning, asking the same question she always did. I hadn't had enough sleep or coffee for her enthusiasm, but since I kinda didn't hate her as much as the rest of the office, I just sighed and hung my head, foregoing the idea of telling her that my morning was already shit. Not here yet, I grumbled, scrambling through a stack of papers that didn't make any sense to me at the moment. It might have only been 8, but today had already been a day. I had planned on arriving a little earlier so that I'll bust out of this place for a much-needed nap, and maybe a few glasses of wine, and another round with my vibrator. Serenity hadn't asked me why I had come back so late, and I hadn't told her either. A few weeks ago I would have spilled my troubles to the carefree spirit staring at me from across my desk. Every single word would have passed through her ears and disappeared into the ether, but my soul would feel lighter. Now, it felt like a fucking waste of time. Between troubles at work, trying to figure out if 2 literal hotties were infatuated with me, and that weird-ass salt candle, I didn't feel it necessary to talk to someone who didn't seem to care. If I really thought about it, Serenity was my friend, but not the other way around. I think I was just the reason her rent was cheaper. I might have chalked it up to being horny and tired, but this girl had watched my morning fall apart, from spilled coffee to Ruth, our resident Karen, dropping another project on my desk, a lecture from Edith, and then stubbing my toe against that oddly placed wall we thought was, well, odd. And I didn't really care about my throbbing toe, but it was the principle of it. Serenity had just rushed into my office to ask about the hottie brigade, and here I was trying not to cry because of my fucking stubbed toe. An annoying ding rang from my computer, signaling a message in the office group chat. Serenity rushed around my desk and stared at it. Ruth S. Brownies, what do you think she put in them this time? I stifled a chuckle because I was still a little pissed at her for not noticing my troubles. It was a running joke, though, about Ruth S. Bakery Creations. She was an excellent baker, but her experimentations left a lot to be desired. Surprises were always around the corner, our most recent surprise being caramel apricot cake with peanuts. I had been okay with the caramel and apricots, but the sudden crunch wasn't welcoming. I managed to shrug. Ants, I don't know. I didn't want to have this light-hearted conversatio. And I wanted to talk about my toe. No, that wasn't it. I just wanted Serenity to notice. A heavy sigh fell from my lips as my hand hovered over my top drawer. It held one lone white envelope, a resignation letter for whenever I got too fed up with the place, which, to be honest, was a lot nearer than I cared to admit. Serenity chuckled, and paired it with a slap on my back as she headed for my open office door. Shouldn't you hide that a little better? What if they find it? Then I guess I am fired, I offered. Did any of this even matter? Edith was shit and made our lives hell. It was a wonder more people hadn't quit already, although I seemed to be the general target at the moment. I followed Serenity to the break room to get another cup of coffee, my 3rd one this morning, unable to hold on to the few hours of restless sleep I had acquired. The caffeine was doing fuck all, but it felt like it should be doing something, and it kick in eventually, so I down a few more cups before I convinced myself if it was a bad idea. And of course someone used the last of the coffee and dumped it haphazardly in the sink, full of water, and somehow coffee grounds as well. How that had happened in the last 30 minutes, or who was the culprit, no idea. I didn't really care. I just needed another hit of caffeine, and Serenity's babbling about the hottie brigade's arrival was making my head spin. Nothing going right, the little voice in the back of my head suggested. I brushed it off as I dipped my hands into the sink to start the cleaning process when the break room door swung open and Cadden strolled in, a box of donuts in one hand and a container of Joe in the other. He gingerly placed them on the counter beside me, his arms on either side of my body. I could feel his hard, chiseled chest against my back as my breath caught in my throat. I stilled until he placed a soft kiss on my temple and then stepped back altogether. Was it just me, or had the room gotten several degrees hotter? I clenched my thighs toge there and set the pot back into the sink because now that there was coffee, I no longer had any need to wash anything. Today was always going to be awkward, no matter how hard I tried to avoid Caden or Jonah. But I hadn't imagined this kind of response, so I was just kind of standing there, staring up at his irritatingly gorgeous smirk as his eyes searched my expression. Sweetheart, you were already tensing, and the morning just fucking started. Relax. Have some coffee, maybe a donut. Better make it 2. Sugar is good for the soul. I wanted to fucking shrink into my oversized sweater as my cheeks grew hot with his attention. He raised an eyebrow in jest, daring me to say something. I bit my lip, his eyes glued to the movement, heated with unspoken promises. I clenched my thighs even tighter, my fucking core lighting up like a Christmas tree. I wanted those fucking lips on mine, or my other ones. Horny jail wasn't going to be enough, was it? I thought he might have tried to find a moment to keep me from saying anything about last night, but he didn't seem at all perturbed by the fact that I knew his secret. In fact, he seemed almost ecstatic that I did. As if it was a weight off his chest. Well, it just made things more awkward, now that I knew what he was packing in those goddamn slacks every day. Caden wrapped an arm around me, and for a moment I thought he was going to do something in front of Serenity, but he snatched his hand back, producing a chocolate munchkin. He popped it in his mouth, winked at me, and then turned around to head back out the break room door. I finally let out the breath I had been holding. Serenity's giggles reached my ears. He fucking likes you. I knew it. He a little strange. I wouldn't say that he liked me because that was wholly untrue, but there was definitely a mutual attraction. Feelings that I would have acted on if we didn't work together. I grabbed a mug from the cabinets and poured myself a healthy cup of coffee before taking the largest, unapologetic swig I could. Goddamn, that was good. Serenity shook her head as she brushed past me and grabbed a few munchkins, popping them like candy. Strange how, he's sweet and really seems to care about the women in the office. You remember he was the reason we started getting all the toiletries for free in our bathroom. Still, there was no way to tell her that Caden and I had been flirting for a hot minute, even so much as sending a few risky texts and having late-night phone calls that would give those 80s sweetheart movies a run for their money. But it all came down to the details. Caden was Caden. He had the confidence of a god. The way he held himself, the way he moved, the way he danced. He wasn't ashamed of anything. And then there was me, in my frumpy, comfortable attire, constant unruly hair, just trying to get by in a job that I could stand. I was a pushover and too soft to stand up for myself. Caden's interest would wane, and then I wouldn't have much to look forward to when it came to work. Serenity fell silent, a fact I was happy for, as I chugged more of the warm mud. It burned its way down my throat, but I could already feel the jitters creeping up. Hopefully it would be enough to motivate me to finish out the day. Coffee mug to my lips, hands gripping it like a vice, and a small appreciative moan slipping from my throat was the perfect time for Jonah to make his presence. Free coffee. Fuck yeah. I shuddered and sidestepped far away from the counter. No need to experience another hot body pressed to mine without a release. While I was pretty sure Caden would do something about it if I pleaded hard enough, Jonah had already denied me once. Sure, I had been drunk, but I wasn't betting on him not doing it again, even if just for the fun of it. Serenity had perched herself on the counter, swinging her bare legs in an already too short skater dress, munching on her donuts. Not a care in the world. We were at work with a deadline 2 days away, and she looked relaxed, courtesy of hottie number 1's. He mentioned to Jonah. Everyone knew her pet names, and only the ones that were asses, like Ruth, cared about how Serenity referred to them. I watched the gentle banter between Serenity and Jonah, wondering how she was so comfortable with the hottie brigade, and yet hadn't snatched one of them. She was hotter than me, more outgoing, and way more confident in herself. Jonah grunted and grabbed himself a mug. What is he trying to get at? A raise? But I could hear the general teasing in his voice. Maybe he's just that sweet. Jonah chugged an entire cup of coffee, grimaced, and then refilled it. I blinked a few times, wondering how in the world a man like him had found his way here. I still didn't have the entire story. No way in hell that smile is as genuine as it looks. Serenity popped down and reached past him for another handful of munchkins. It was interesting how he sidestepped closer to me to actively avoid touching her. I am not even sure he noticed he had done it. Just because you? Serenity began, but Jonah cut her off, his eyes glued to his second cup of coffee. I wondered if he was going to chug that one too. I had a smile like that once, on top of the goddamn world, and then Mother Nature told me it was time and snatched my smile right off my lips. So no, I don't think that fucking smile is genuine, Serenity. An uncomfortable silence fell among us, and for a moment, I thought I was going to be ignored. Not that I cared. Okay, maybe I cared a little. Especially after he riled me up in the wee hours of this morning and then just walked me back to my apartment. Jonah threw me a wink, a teasing grin on his lips as he walked out. Morning hot stuff. I grimaced and hid my face behind my mug. I wanted to be angry at him, but he was so fucking sexy. And now that I knew what his lips and hand can't like on my skin, I just wanted a replay with a finishing act. Serenity whipped around me to me, her eyes flashing with desire and maybe a hint of jealousy. What the fuck was that about? I stared blankly at her and she gripped me by the arms, shaking me out of my stupor. You've got half the hottie squad saying good morning to you like a goddamn cavalry. Spill. There is nothing to spill. They read just nice. Big fat liar. I did not have the heart, nor the energy to tell the woman that one was a fucking nightclub dancer and the other had nearly fucked me in the stockroom. Nope, that was for my mind bank only. She scoffed, and you re the most underdressed girl here. I am sure she hadn't meant it as a jab, she wasn't wrong, but fuck if it didn't sting a little. What s beneath it counts, I offered lamely, because what other reason was there that both Jonah and Cadden were giving me attention? I mean, I had a host of other reasons that I was their focus, but I was actively choosing to ignore those. Her eyes bugged out. You re having sex with them? No. I am just saying that maybe because I am the only one in the office not ogling them, I am not a threat. I mumbled the last half of the sentence because now I was just bullshitting. I was the safest option in the office. Everyone knew about my rule not to date coworkers anymore. I was married to my job, would bend over backward for Edith, and would basically let everyone walk over me. Fuck, I needed to change that, didn't I? Oh, playing it cool, huh? She did that nudge, wink, wink thing before stuffing another donut in her mouth. I honestly don't know how she kept her figure. Who brought the coffee? And the small light of my morning dimmed to a complete void of nothingness as the sound of my ex wafted through the room. Hottie number 1. I hid my face behind my mug again, trying not to stare at the hottie that was Chad McLeod. Hottie number 3. He had always been part of the hottie brigade, even before I believed that I had sunk my claws into him. He had been all sorts of beautiful and nice in my eyes when I first met him. He was sweet and caring, and a full dream come true. But first impressions, in my experience, were usually wrong. I should have known that Chad was anything but the persona he carried around at work. I was a way to warm his bed even though he stole a piece of my heart. He wasn't even good about hiding the affair. I don't even think he cared, especially since he was still with Linda. I hid my scowl as he trotted over to the sink and growled in my general direction. You didn't clean the pot? Serenity saved me from speaking. There is legit coffee here. Chad shook his motley head of curls that I used to love running my fingers through once upon a time. If he didn't open his mouth and didn't succumb to half his emotions, I could still see the beauty in his features. Dunkin' coffee tastes like shit. It is free. I wanted to respond but knew that my voice would probably crack or I'd say something that I'd regret. Chad was buddies with Edith, and I really didn't need any more hassle in my life. His eyes slid to my frumpy form and landed on the 2 munchkins lying on a napkin meant for snack time in my office. Eli, Rosé, 2 donuts, and Q. One of the reasons why I realized I had chosen the wrong hottie. Hottie number 1 said it was fine. I tried imitating Serenity, but it didn't feel right. Chad chortled as he began the processing of washing out the pot. Maybe you shouldn't listen to him. A few minutes of awkward silence sat between us as he prepared a fresh pot of coffee and then left the break room. Should I go kick his ass? I shook my head and blew out a deep breath. Every time I stumbled into Chad, I was reminded why I dumped his ass, or rather why I wasn't too butthurt that he had broken up with me in front of the entire office. Don't date guys at work, they said, and what did I do? Ran headfirst into it. I downed the rest of my coffee, and then rinsed the mug in the sink. Is your stupid rule the reason why you won't touch the other 2? No, I blurted out. Because while on the surface it was the only barrier, I apparently wasn't the one holding back. At least in Jonah's case. I kind of though. I had figured Cadden out, until last night. It is, she prodded, flipping her hair over her shoulder. God, just go for it. They read both into you. Which one would you choose? Both. Date both and then tell me all about it. God, every time I come into work I feel like I am sex-starved. I managed a small smile, knowing full well that Serenity had probably tag-teamed a few of those choice prospects from last night. Fine, you go after them. You think I haven't tried, girl. They after you. I wanted to tell Serenity she was wrong as I headed back to my office, but deep down I knew I had added to my problems for today. 1. Figure out this fucking project and how to keep it on track. 2. Stay the fuck away from Edith and Chad. No need to ruin my mood any further. 3. Avoid Jonah and Cadden at all costs. Vibrators could only do so much, and after last night paired with the break room this morning, I was going to flip my shit if one of them didn't offer their services. Horny bitch. I was resigned to. But classification. It didn't even bother me that much anymore as long as I benefited from it. I was going to ignore number 4 explicitly. The fact that that damn salt candle had been sitting in the sink right next to the coffee pot. Nope, just not going to think about it. I didn't need to add spooky shit on top of everything else. I could fucking just get one thing right. It was like the entire universe was against me. After an unsuccessful meeting where I had no updates, the rest of my day just seemed to take a fucking dive. It was strange how much Edith cared about my project. It wasn't even a big one. It wasn't one of the moneymakers or ones that would bring another doctor banging on our doors to accept a position. No one else had any updates on their projects either. But Edith seemed solely focused on mine, my progress, my hiccups. Of course, like a fucking adult, I told her nothing, that there were no updates, and that everything would be ready for Friday's launch, which was a fucking lie. Which was also the reason why I barged into the stockroom like I fucking owned it, catting on my heels for whatever reason, hoping that at least holding the product in my hands would calm my misplaced anger. But at the sight of a shirtless, sweaty Jonah rearranging and organizing the stockroom, I stopped in my tracks, Cadden running into me, his hands gripping my shoulders for purchase. Fuck these men and their perfectly sculpted bodies. Oh, be my fucking heart. Hi, I squeaked, embarrassingly. Cadden raised an eyebrow, or at least I was pretty sure did from behind me. One I actively tried to ignore but wasn't convincing enough. Somehow he knew that something had transpired, and to be perfectly honest, it was kind of his fault. If I hadn't been so riled up yesterday, who knows, maybe I would have been able to deny myself the simple pleasures that was Jonah wrapped up in a little package. Well, a large package. He met my gaze, his eyes sliding to Cadden for a moment with a smirk. I bit back the urg. To groan as I gestured to the boxes we lugged in early this morning. Cadden let me go and shuffled to my side. Jonah, you unloaded a whole truck since we got here. Maybe I should hire you to move my house. Jonah shook his head and I tensed, hoping he wasn't going to say something. But he seemed to get a kick out of both my discomfort and absurd loyalty to this job. Wasn't he just me? Hot stuff right there decided to come in after a night of dancing to unload the truck. Excuse me? I could feel Cadden's heated gaze on my cheek as he bore holes into my flesh. Weren't you at striptease last night? Oh fuck, and now everyone knew. I was still staring at Jonah and watched his face change. Amusement, disappointment, I could tell. Striptease, yeah, LL, we're out together. This is why I didn't date at work. I wanted to hide. Nah, she was out with her girl. Cadden told him, I just happened to see her. Never got to say hi though. Just happened to see me. I wanted to crack a smile and tell Jonah Had Cadden hadn't managed to say hi because he was doing some of his own dancing. But I refrained from that by biting my lip and trying to look innocent. Silence. When neither man broke the awkward tension in the room, I huffed an impatient breath and spilled, well, yes, I was there. But then I got a call from the shipper and they said they were leaving the truck here unlocked. So I didn't have a choice. I had choices. I had all the choices. But I was a sucker for keeping my job. Sue me. How did you get? I cut off Cadden with a tired grimace, rolling my eyes. She used my number, okay, but it's unloaded now. Hoping that we'd push that part of the conversation, I looked to Jonah for help. But he was just leaning against one of those stacks of boxes, a permanent smirk on his lips, looking like a fucking sexy guard, tech guy, or whatever the heck he was to Edith. I wasn't getting out of this, was I? Cadden mulled over that. Wait, did you unload all that shit in the dress you wearing last night? His eyes heated again. Jonah threw his head back and laughed, like a full-on guttural belly laugh. Fuck yeah, she did. I squeezed my thighs together at the delicious sound as color rose to my cheeks. Even though he was lying, I still didn't need Cadden to know how much I labored over a job that I should have quit before I even started. Yeah, I said that. This was the most I had truly ever heard Jonah say, except for last night, and the men seemed to be okay around each other. Which was weird, because I thought they were both vying for my attention. I just need to double-check the product, I stated dumbly like there had been any other reason to storm down here. Cadden threw me a small, comforting smile. You needed an escape. It was just a statement, but it didn't come out like an accusation. Almost like a confirmation, an understanding of my situation. Confusing is what this all was. I mean, he wasn't wrong. After our morning meeting and another cup of coffee, I could sit still. Serenity and her head in a stack of reports, claiming that she was busy so I didn't have anyone to unload onto. And when Chad decided that my office was the place he needed to be, I escaped to the one place I knew he wouldn't go. The stockroom. Chad and Jonah were enemies for a reason I didn't understand. Does it matter? Just give me one of the boxes. It was like 1,000 degrees in here, which is why I now understood Jonah's lack of shirt even if was fucking distracting. Sweat was pouring down my back beneath my frumpy sweater, and I couldn't take it anymore. I shed myself of the thick cotton, forgetting about what I had underneath. A tank top, like one of those form-fitting white strappy tank tops that are meant to show off every curve. Fuck, granted both of these men had been privy to those curves last night. But it had been dark and I was a mess. 2 distinct whistles echoed through the room and I glared at both of them. I will put it back and sweat to death if both of you don't shut the fuck up. Then, I covered my mouth because what was I even doing? Cadden just chuckled as we all shuffled to the back of the stockroom where Jonah had begun sorting the different shipments. Jonah handed me a box and I grabbed it, Cadden's gentle hands on my waist to steady me as I stumbled backward a little. I didn't need it, but his body pressed against mine. Fuck. My eyes shifted to meet Jonah's, Cadden's firm hands still resting on my waist, only to meet another heated gaze. I was going to literally melt into a pile of goo here. I shifted slowly until my back was against a wall, ignoring their panty-melting expressions. I didn't know what to do with either of them at this point, and blamed the heat. Opening the box with a few curses at the tough packaging, I unearthed one of the smaller packages and stared at it. Like my gaze locked on the strange pink and blue swirls hugging the outer carton. It's cute, like girly and entirely wrong for a farm office cute. Dread set in and I ripped open the plastic top, again, just straight. Willing myself not to cry. Shit. I could feel the concern wafting from both of the men in the room as I slid to my butt, defeated. I was definitely getting fired if I didn't hand in my resignation first. I had spent my entire morning lugging plushies. The cutest devil plushies I had ever seen in my life. Cadden let out a distressed laugh, and Jonah looked torn between finding those truckers and beating them to a pulp and pulling me into a hug. I left them to figure out their own emotions as I whipped out my phone and dialed the guy from last night. No answer. I tried again, busy tone. And then I called their office, trembling in my little space. I explained my situation to the guy in hushed tones and he barked out a laugh. If you hadn't sold yourself to the legit devil Edith and not paid your dues, I might have been able to help you. Click, staring at the phone, but my gut said the fucker on the other line was just fed up with Edith. But something else was playing at me, and it was almost as if the guy meant every word literally. Cadden and Jonah were hovering over my whimpering form like they were about to beat the bejesus out of whoever made me cry, and while the thought was admirable, I just couldn't deal with that alpha protective shit right now. I grabbed my sweater and stomped back up to my office, holding in my tears until my office door was shut and locked. Waterfalls began pouring down my cheeks as I fought hard to figure out a way out of this place called hell. When my eyes fell on that damn salt candle on the edge of my desk again, I just huffed a shattered breath and squeezed my eyes shut to ward off the chaos that was my life. Just 5 minutes of silence. Just 5 minutes where everything was okay and right with my life. Was I asking too much of the universe? Apparently, 5 minutes was too much to ask of the universe because Serenity was now in my office, demanding to know why I was in tears and why Cadden looked like a lovesick puppy, wandering the halls outside but not daring to come inside, muttering something about the worst possible situation. I choked on my own snot and wiped it on the back of my hand. Fucking sexy, I know. I could answer her first question, didn't understand the second one, and wanted to answer neither of them. Babe, like fuck, you can literally break down at work. That is uncalled for and uber unprofessional. She perched her ass on my desk, and I just wanted to swat it away and shoo her out of my office. Besides, Edith needs the product. My face soured at the thought of showing Edith the devil plushies, and the tears started up again. Thank God I was a silent crier. I am not sure what I would have done if bawled out loud in front of Serenity right now. My head was pounding and my vision was blurring. It felt like my heart was in my throat, and I kind of wanted to throw up, but that wouldn't solve anything. There would just be more mess to clean up, and Serenity would find another way to berate my unprofessional behavior. I traveled to Serenity, and I choked on a groan as my gaze fell on the salt candle in her hands. Why do you fucking have that? She followed my gaze and just shrugged. Don't worry about it. We good. What does that even mean? She set it on my desk, dangerously close to my keyboard, and I just glared at it for a moment before shuffling away in my desk chair. It felt like darkness, and I just didn't really want to look at it. As we sat there in uncomfortable silence, I realized that I didn't want to be in the office any longer. Nothing was going right anyway, and it was almost lunchtime. Nothing could fix the mistakes that had already happened, and sitting here, wallowing in my own emotions, was a terrible way to waste time. I pushed past Serenity, knowing full well that a couple of weeks ago, I would have invited her out to gossip about the office, and reached for the door. She seemed to notice the oddity of the situation as well as she cleared her throat. "Don T messed this up for us." My hand froze on the knob and I frowned. "Don T messed this up for us. What, the rent is due next week?" I had the inkling to throat punch her or kick her in the groin as I fought the urge to whip around and meet her expression with the pain in my eyes. She didn't deserve anything from me. I threw the door open, ignoring Cadden's tortured smile and Edith's bellowing voice demanding that I explain what the fuck had been delivered. Great, she has seen them. I was not fucking going down for this. I hadn't even ordered the little shits. I hadn't demanded they be delivered before Friday. This wasn't my fucking fault. But it would be declared my fault because it always was. I had been putting up with literal shit for way too fucking long, and it was time that I started taking care of myself. Which is why I ended up day drinking at striptease without a care in the world. Yay me for the win. Day drinking is absolutely for the warriors because you're not able to hide under the pretense of a hard day's worth of work. The dim lights that bars put up to make everyone look fucking attractive. I know I am a hot mess in my frumpy sweater and glasses that make Harry Potter look adorable. But I could seem to care as I downed my third shot of the day. It burned just a little more than they usually did. But I signaled the bartender for another. My phone had been buzzing and ringing non-stop. A billion missed calls and texts, most from Serenity and Edith about deadlines and professionalism. I had long since turned the fucker off, but I was slightly worried about my reckless behavior. I didn't do that. I was the safe choice. Always. The next shot pursed to my lips. I caught Cadden staring at me, seated inches from my pitiful form. How long has he been watching my fucking pity party? I wanted to yell at him to leave me alone, but I could seem to get the words out. Torn between downing the shot in my hand and leaving the establishment to start on the bottle of wine I had stashed in my room. The bartender slid me another shot, and my cheeks flamed in embarrassment. His eyes drifted to Cadden's worried expression. "Didn't he know you guys were acquainted?" Cadden shrugged. "It's complicated." I could have sworn that the bartender was almost jealous of Cadden, but I didn't have time to dwell on it as he dragged me back into one of the dressing rooms. I huffed a sigh and bowed my head, instantly regretting the shots I had downed like fucking water. What is going on? This isn't like you, isn't like me. That meant Cadden had been watching me, that this strange attraction between us really wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. I blushed and hunched farther, curling into myself as I settled into one of the weird, colorful armchairs. I wanted to tell him what was going through my head, but I knew he had seen part of it. I mean, he was there when we pulled out the plushies. I was a fucking failure, unable to do anything right, even if this wasn't my fucking project. His warm smile wasn't helping right now. I wanted to rip it off his goddamn face. As he knelt before me, placing a soft hand on my leg. "Everything's wrong," I finally said. The words muffled as I dragged my knees to my chest. The alcohol was getting to me, and it wouldn't be long before I was either in tears or ready to fuck the world. I kind of hoped it was the first one. I didn't need to lose my job from any other stupid ideas running through my head. He shuffled a little closer, but I didn't dare meet his expression. "Tell me, you think I am insane?" And he would if I mentioned anything about that damn salt candle. My head whipped up and I frantically searched the area for any traces of the thing. Relief set in when I didn't find it, but my nerves were shot. The thing was definitely following me somehow. Cadden mustered up a laugh, and I wasn't aware when he had moved from the space in front of me to the small space in the armchair beside me. It was a tight fit, but a comfortable one, as he shimmied me onto his lap, his arms strung loosely around my waist. "Baby girl, I dance for a living. I think I can handle weird." He had no fucking idea, did he? So, I explained to him about the ghosts and spooky shit that had been happening over the last few months, and then the salt candle and Serenity's strange behavior. To be honest, it wasn't that strange. I had a history of relationships full of red flags because anyone who showed interest in me was better than nothing. Crap taste, I know. I should have known after mixing with Chad that things were only going to get worse. When I finished, near tears and way too tired to deal with any more shit, Cadden laughed. The motherfucker laughed, and then he apologized, but I could tell he didn't quite believe me. I think he believed that I believed it, but he didn't seem like a ghost type of guy. I could blame him. I would think someone like me was fucking crazy too, but as I stared into his eyes, it wasn't that. That laugh wasn't at me. It was a bewildered response to the entire situation. because if I wasn't crazy, that option was worse. One hand gripped my waist a little tighter, the other perched under my chin to angle my gaze to his eyes. Baby girl, we'll figure this out. He leaned in to place a soft kiss on my nose, and then one each on my cheeks before meeting my lips in one of the most gentle embraces I could have imagined from a guy like Cadden. Let us try not to fuck off work before the big project, eh? I didn't answer him. I felt like I was in some warped parallel universe where a candle was out to get me, and two of the hottest guys I had ever met were into me. My real life consisted of my favorite frumpy sweaters, overworking, and pity parties at home, sprinkled with the occasional night out required by serenity. Cadden didn't seem to catch my confusion, or he was blatantly ignoring it so that I didn't embarrass myself further, as he slipped me off his lap and led me to the back door. For now, let us just get you home, alright? Pretty hypocritical of a guy telling me not to fuck off work when you right here, Cade. I was joking, but I kind of wasn't. I was the only one that got shit on at work, and I needed to know why. He shrugged. Edith was flipping her shit and called her husband. I tensed. If he knew about the fuck-up, I probably wasn't going to have a job tomorrow. He told her to calm the fuck down and figure it out. He seemed pretty tired of her shit before hanging up. And then Edith ordered everybody to fix it. That's when I stepped out to come find you. So it was for Edith? I pulled from his grip, freezing mid-step in the middle of the sidewalk. I knew something was off, knew that Cadden could possibly have just come out here to rescue me out of the kindness of his heart. The expression on his face soured. Baby girl, no. He cupped my cheeks in his hands, kissing my nose again. Fuck no, I was just looking for the best time to slip out. You were kind of a wreck when you left. Oh, so he did care. This was weird. I nodded matter-of-factly like it made a difference, and started the short march to my apartment in silence. Cadden didn't make another effort to start conversation, something I was thankful for. But now that we had figured out the more difficult stuff and the alcohol was still playing tricks with my loose lips, I had questions. I stole a few glances along the trek, trying to figure out how to word it without offending him. But I didn't get the chance to. Would you quit it? You want to know why I danced on to you? I hummed in response, waiting eagerly for his answer. It was just supposed to pay off a few unexpected bills, set me up for college, you know. Then I fell in love with it. The staff is great, and I've made friends. I wanted to agree with that, but there were remnants of pain that hung on his words as if those unexpected bills had a lot more meaning to it than he let on. Why are you even working here if you making so much there? Because dancing on a resume isn't all that great of a boost. I can dance forever no matter how much I love it. But as fucking office, he just shrugged. I had some connections. This time his voice was small, and he bowed his head a little further, avoiding my gaze. Connections? Yay me in these one or two word questions. I racked my brain for any connections that made sense. One did, but I really didn't want to believe it, because that meant that the gorgeous man walking alongside me wasn't merely a friend and an employee. He was kind of the enemy. I stopped again, a block from my apartment, and stared up at him. Cade, who's your connection? He didn't answer, chewing on his bottom lip like he had committed the worst possible infraction. Answer the goddamn question, Edith. The fuck how I glared at him so hard hoping he'd spontaneously combust. He didn't. Please tell me you guys aren't fucking related. A moment of silence passed and I thought I was going to get lucky. She's my grandfather's wife. So not directly related but related nonetheless. Nope, no luck, no lauder. I used to win here. Don pass go. Don collect $200. Straight to jail. Anger was definitely one emotion I was feeling, but also frustration and betrayal. And Rose, I wasn't proud of it, but I screamed a little, the sound coming out more like a pissed-off growl as I stalked the last few steps to my apartment. I was getting pretty good at this avoiding thing. I would just keep on doing it until I could do it anymore. Unfortunately, when I saw that another one of the hottie brigade was resting against my building like he had something to say to me, I realized the universe was just against me, because that was the only fucking reason all this shit was happening at once. Still no salt candle. I could really call it a win, but fuck I'd take what I could get at this point. My head whipped between the boys, Cadden nearly colliding with me as I tried to process why the fuck Jonah was approaching me. He shouldn't be here, just as Cadden should have figured out that I no longer wanted to talk too high. And even with his cliché, let me explain phrase, alright stop fucking with me. I stepped aside, watching as they stood next to each other with equally confused expressions on their faces. Are you guys fucking with me? I am not one of the cute girls at work. I am not Serenity. I like my frumpy sweaters in my office, but now both of you are like, I don't know around. There was a moment of silence before they both burst out laughing. I stomped my foot angrily. I was so over playing games, juggling a shitty-ass job, a shitty-ass friend, and confusing as fuck men. I was over all of it. I just wanted to snuggle up in a fuzzy blanket, a nice cup of hot cocoa overloaded with marshmallows, and a book that told tales of men that could possibly exist in the real world. Baby girl, if you haven't noticed, you kinda hot. I bit my lip, staring the both of them as I scrunched up my nose. The shots were definitely taking effect now, and I was finding it hard to focus on anything. Well, that and standing, which is also probably why the liquid courage running through me was making me say stupid things. So you just want to fuck me now? Am I the last holdout in the office? That was a shitty thing to say. I shrugged to myself, trying to read the men's expressions, and failing. Cadden growled at me, and Jonah just frowned. He was the first to speak. Fook, is that how you think of yourself? I want to rip off that guy's head. The guy, my eyes went wide at the implication that Jonah was going to rip off my ex-Chad's head, because while it would hilarious and Jonah was more than capable, it would start shit at work. Shit that I could afford to have happen. Number don't do that, I mumbled. It's just weird, the attention. Cadden half smiled, and I wanted to smile back before I remembered I was mad at him. Girl, we've had our eye on you since we started, but you fucking shy. I glared at him. I am not shy. I folded my arms around myself, hugging my frumpy sweater for warmth. Cadden snorted, you goddamn are. Serenity could probably tell you that we've been trying to get your attention forever, but fucking Chad got there first. Chad, my voice cracked over his name as I stumbled a few steps, and both men's arms shot out to steady me. My cheeks flushed in response to their touch. I wanted to settle there, but it would be weird. Right? Yeah, Chad. Jonah grumbled. We don't fuck with him, and you seemed happy, so we called it a truce. I shuffled a little closer, enjoying the warmth that they provided, even if I wasn't going to end up giving either one the time of day. I wasn't happy, I mumbled into the air to no one in particular. Chad treated me like fucking dirt. I just wished I had seen that before I had invested my feelings. Jonah pulled me against his chest, kissing my forehead. Hot stuff, we know that now. A deep sigh fell from my lips, my eyes fluttering closed. Sleep, it doesn't even matter. I am going to get fired. Nothing is going right. I am going to go at a job at the diner across the street or something. Neither one of the men spoke, so I kept talking, running through my own thoughts because what else was there to do? This time tomorrow, I wasn't going to have a fucking job. It's like the entire damn office is riding off this thing, which doesn't make sense, because we've been named the #1 pharma office in the city for 3 years running. No one seems to know what I am talking about. And that fucking salt candle. I felt Jonah tense against me, and I knew he was trying to silently converse with Cadden to understand what I meant. I shimmied from his embrace, throwing Cadden one last glare to let him know that he was still in the fucking doghouse. It doesn't matter. I am going to bed. An uncomfortable silence continued between the three of us before I nodded and wobbled my way into my apartment building. The guys were weird. They just told me they had backed off because of Chad, and now that Chad wasn't in the picture, they were okay with sharing. Man. What words, too bad for both of them that I didn't have the time or energy to spend on frivolous relationships. Jonah was too goddamn righteous, and Cadden was a fucking liar. Well, kind of. Still, the thought of me between those men made me fucking wet. I unlocked my apartment door expecting to be greeted with silence. Instead, I was met with Serenity's disappointed expression, and that salt candle cradled in her lap. I froze and stared at her, waiting for an explanation. She just huffed, I can't believe you just fucked off work like that. Edith is pissed. I didn't respond as she continued, standing up and crossing the living room to get to me, that candle still in her hands, and we need to talk. About priorities. Her eyes flashed with anger as she stuck her hands out as if to give me the candle. I glanced at it, and then back at Serenity before I heard the thing hit the floor with a sickening thud. Had she expected me to touch it, I fought the urge to yell at her because, to be honest, I wasn't and sure why I wouldn't touch it. But the fact that Serenity noticed my discomfort and still tried to get me to hold it, nope. Not today. I spun on my heel and walked right back out of my apartment and back down the 5 flights of stairs without a word. I am not sure why I was okay sharing Rose with Jonah. We had a lot of history together, but I wouldn't call the relationship friendly. More like a mutual understanding, one that had grown as we had watched and fallen in love with Rose, until motherfucking Chad swooped in like an angel and swept her off her feet. For a while, we thought all was lost, that the one woman we wanted had chosen someone else. But not even a month into the relationship, we realized Chad wasn't an angel. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Worse still, we realized that Rose knew and for some reason wouldn't fucking leave. We tried approaching her, but she wouldn't even give us the time of day. She was dating someone else. Rose was loyal to a fault, and we loved that about her, even if it was one of her downfalls. Now, with Chad out of the picture, Jonah and I felt we had another chance. Unfortunately, she had been fed so many lies that she thought we were playing a cruel joke on her, and nothing could have been farther from the truth. It didn't help that she had just found out my connection to Edith, or the fact that she thought there was a salt candle following her. I was still processing that part. Settled in Jonah's car, I rested my head against the headrest, eyes closed. She's not entirely wrong. I tensed at the hardened voice beside me, waiting for Jonah to elaborate. Something weird is going on in the office. I chanced to glance in his direction, watching as he fiddled with his phone. Why didn't you tell her that? He let out a breathy sigh. Because I didn't want to spook her about something I don't even understand. I sat up a little and leaned over the console, wishing he would just look at me. I didn't know Jonah to be a frightened piece of shit, but the way that his jaw kept tensing told me that we were in for a ride. Don't understand what? Another motherfucking sigh fell from his lips as he passed the phone over to me. I didn't understand what I was watching at first, until Edith and one of the employees that I recognized came onto the screen. I couldn't even tell what they were doing, other than the fact that it looked weird as fuck and like satanic. Can explain that, can you? I shook my head, eyes wide as I continued to watch additional clips of the same strangely erotic dancing gliding across the screen. There were props and yelling that had been muted, but it was all strangely ritualistic. The clips ended, and I stared at Jonah, trying to understand the fuckery I had just seen. It happens around the same time every year. But this year, he pulled up another clip. It got interrupted. I watched the participants spook over something just off screen. Chaos ensued and the dance ended abruptly, the participants spreading back out over the fuss. Terror seemed to rule the moment, but without sound, there wasn't much else I could draw from the clip. My eyes drifted to the date and time in the right-hand corner. Wasn't that the day before the potluck this year? Jonah nodded as he slipped his phone into the middle console, my thoughts running rampant. Potluck had sucked this year, like royally. Everyone was crabby and irritable, especially Edith. You don't think it has something to do with all of this, do you? And Rose? Jonah shrugged, pulling out a different device and handing it to me. A paused clip settled on the screen. I looked to him for an explanation, but he didn't offer one as I pressed play. My mouth dropped open at the erotic cultish display on the screen, noticing the date and time as short clips continued to play. But three things disturbed me more than the rest. 1. These dances, for lack of a better term, happened every week. 2. I knew the woman on that screen. 3. In her hands rested the very candle that Rose had been so terrified of. Ghosts, ghouls, and creatures of the darkness weren't really my thing, but this clip was pretty damn convincing. I took off down the stairs like a bat out of hell, because fuck if I was going to stay in that apartment with Serenity for 1 second longer. There seemed to be a lot more steps than I remembered as I tried to skip a few, nearly face-planting into the front door before bursting back out onto the sidewalk. The wind chill wasn't great, but I could bear it in exchange for being holed up in our apartment. My heart beat erratically in my chest, my lungs closed tight as I tried to figure out my next plan of action. I hadn't even brought my phone, so I had no way of calling someone to pick me up. Not that I had any friends to help me. When my eyes landed on Cadden and Jonah hunched over something in Jonah's car, I made a split-second decision that could have dire consequences. I dove into the back seat. Both of these men were idiots for leaving the doors open, and then sat up looking guilty as hell as silence filled the small space. Their attention was immediately on me, a mixture of desire and confusion on their faces. Oh, and worry, lots of worries. I can fucking stay there. Because of your roommate, Cadden offered, and I almost nodded, but it wasn't that. There was more to it. It was everything. Serenity. The candle. Serenity and the candle. Jonah glanced between the both of us, his eyebrows raised. Roommate. Cadden lightly punched the guy in the shoulder. She lives with Serenity. I swallowed a few times as I stared at the both of them, wondering why they weren't pounding me with questions. That is until my eyes fell on the tablet and the paused video on the screen. Serenity was frozen in an entranced position, almost like she was dancing to some kind of strange music. I'd seen her do those dances before. They were odd and highly uncomfortable, but I had grown used to it. Code for locking myself in my room until she was done hogging the living room. Cadden cleared his throat and I realized that I was still in the back of Jonah's car without much of an explanation. Right. It's not really because of Serenity. It's the candle. I watched their faces fall a little, but I was terrified. Fucking following me. And now it's in my apartment. Are you sure? Cadden began, but my pissed-off expression stopped him. Don't say I am fucking crazy. Serenity tried to hand me the fucking thing. Look, just drop me off at the subway. I had no idea where I was going to go, but anywhere was better than here. Serenity was probably staring at the window, watching the three of us converse. I was going to pay for this tomorrow at work, if I still had a job. The men remained silent, seemingly deliberating in bro code. But I had questions of my own. Why are you watching videos of Serenity? And where did you get them? I waited for some weird answer that they had cameras in my place, because with my luck, that's where those videos came from. Jonah sighed. You me. NTIONED the candle and I, well, surveillance of the office has a lot of strange ritualistic dancing where that candle is involved. My eyes bugged out as Jonah continued. There is a ritual every year, but this year was interrupted. And now Serenity does these dances every week in the middle of the office. I grimaced, knowing that those dances were not for public consumption. Cadden leaned over the back of the seat, gripping my chin roughly, as his gaze locked with mine. Baby girl, you've seen these dances before, haven't you? Serenity is weird. She does them all the time in the living room. My eyes flitted between the two men, realization flooding through me. Wait, you think this might have something to do with the project failure? They didn't answer that question, as Jonah set the car in drive, Cadden giving directions. The men mumbled back and forth in the front seat, and I wondered how long they had actually been friends, or if they just tolerating each other for me. I really didn't need more how's in my workplace. Then again, the attentions of two very beautiful men wasn't something that came by very often, if at all. 5 minutes later, we drove through a gated community and up a driveway that seemed like it was for Hollywood stars, rather than employees that worked at a small office with shit pay. I followed Cadden wordlessly, throwing shocked glances at Jonah, who mirrored my expression. What in the actual fuck? Cadden laughed at our mixed expressions. Dancing pays, baby girl. As if that wasn't the fucking truth. A pole stood in the middle of his retro living room, of course it did, and he winked at me. As I stared at it with awe, memories of my club night flooding through my mind, he wiggled his eyebrows at the both of us. I can give you a private show later if you like, both of you, if that's what you fancy. But I thought maybe a shower and sleep sounded good right about now. Jonah and I turned beet red at the inclination, at the ease with which those words came out of his mouth. I hadn't been sure whether to push Rose for answers or not after she came out of the shower, but one of Cadden's thin towels wrapped around her body. Hair dripping from the fresh water stopped me in my tracks. Well, that and Cadden's glare to not fuck this up, whatever this was. Cadden handed her one of his shirts and a pair of shorts, a bit of jealousy washing over me at the fact that Rose could have been wearing my clothes if we had gone to my house instead. But women like to be romanced, and Cadden was doing a much better job of it than I would have. I stood awkwardly against the opposite side of the room, wondering how the sleeping arrangements were going to work out, because fuck if Cadden was going to sleep next to her, and I was put out on the couch. The fact that I was even entertaining sharing this woman with Cadden was strange enough, but I was still a man with desires, wants, needs. Cadden caught me staring at the California King and just smirked, gesturing to Rose. All three of us were here Beck. House of her, so it would be her choice. I just hoped she didn't leave me out of whatever this was. Rose plopped into the middle of the bed, hair now pulled into a tight braid, her eyes flitting between the two of us. Neither of us had a shirt on, but she wasn't ogling us. She was waiting, but for what I could fucking tell. Offer fuck as sake. None of us are prudes, we can all sleep in the same damn bed. An exasperated sigh fell from her lips even as she twitched with the idea of us all sharing a bed. I think the exhaustion overrode any insecurity she had at this point. Well, that and the fact that her roommate was one creepy motherfucker. We climbed in on either side, hesitant to keep from scaring her. She tensed at first, but then relaxed as we pressed up against her, straddling her with our knees. I sent Cadden a look, and he just smiled as he gripped her chin, pressing his full lips to hers. She immediately responded to him, orching against him as she shifted to press her chest against his, and I took that as an invitation to start kissing down her neck. A long, slow moan escaped her, and my dick hardened at the beautiful sound, my hands roaming her waist, her stomach, and then stopping at her breasts. I knew I shouldn't have entertained this, and not just because Chad was her ex, but I wasn't doing much thinking at the moment. I angled her chin towards me so that I could take her lips, loving the way she gasped into my mouth as I kissed her. A hand fell to my boxers, massaging me through the thin fabric, and I thrust into it. For a moment, I was in pure bliss, but the hand was way too firm and way too big to be Rose's. My eyes flew in shock as I stared over Rose's shoulder at Cadden. He smirked, throwing me a sinful wink before grabbing me again, causing me to jerk in his hold. I didn't know why I didn't have a problem with this. In any other situation, I'd have called this entire night off and slept on the couch, regardless of who Rose decided to share the bed with. But I didn't hate this. I also really didn't hate the way Cadden slipped a hand behind my neck and pulled me towards him. The eye contact was unnerving until he kissed me, and I nearly melted into his hold if it weren't for Rose between us. Fucking hell, something felt like it was compelling my limbs, building my desire in this taboo embrace. I had years overseas under my belt, and yet these two were making me do things I had never even thought about doing. Scratch that. They weren't making me do anything, but fuck if I could get enough of their tastes. Rose squirmed in between us as our hands roamed her thinly clad frame. As far as how this night was supposed to end, this isn't what I had in mind. Granted, I wasn't against it. Slipping my fingers further south, I caressed the inside of her thigh through her shorts, and she squealed when I pressed them against her sex. She is fucking soaked. I tugged Cadden's bottom lip and released him, letting Cadden focus on Rose's lips once more. She arched as I stuck one finger in between her lips, her little yelp of pleasure echoing in the room. I thrust another finger inside and she began riding them, chasing her own orgasm. Cadden was still milking my dick through my shorts, and I was about to fucking blow my load if he didn't slow down. But two could play at that game. My hand brushed Cadden's erection, Rose swallowing his surprised grunt of approval. We worked in a rhythm, kissing, thrusting, moving in tandem with each other, until Rose's terrified shriek filled the air. She locked up between us, frozen. Cadden and I pulled back immediately, following Rose's terrified gaze to the edge of the bed. I should have known that something was off. That damn salt candle had somehow made it to Cadden's house, onto his mattress, and inches from Rose's body. I don't know what it wanted, but it could have been anything good. None of us addressed the candle. We just kind of ignored it because that was the healthy adult thing to do. Cadden and Jonah had fought about how to get it outside, and I was adamant no one touched it for reasons unknown to me. If the bickering had been over anything else, I might have laughed about two grown men fighting. But now, horny as shit, stressed out, and fucking tired, I was just a little pissy. We had crashed on the couch, limbs intertwined as we tried to forget the strange events. The next morning, Jonah drove us to work in silence, and we split the moment we exited the car. Cadden had been gracious enough to let me bother some of his sister's clothes, but they were just a smidgen too tight, and the way they hugged my curves, or lack thereof, made me just a little self-conscious. I kept trying to tug at the fabric, but it wouldn't budge. When I caught Cadden and Jonah eyeing me up, I realized the bastard had done it on purpose. Discreetly picking yet another wedgie, I tried to weave my way around the office and away from any of the other employees because today they all seemed on edge, especially Ruth, who usually had her shit together. Rose, I whipped around and nearly spilled my 7th cup of coffee all over the carpet. I had been timing my coffee runs to avoid the office personnel in its entirety, but someone always seemed to confront me about project updates I didn't have, solutions I hadn't thought of, issues I hadn't dealt with. I was calling your name really loudly. Nodding my head, I sipped my coffee and gripped it harder to keep from showing my discomfort. Sorry, in my world, what's up? I am sure the uncertainty in my tone wasn't hard to hear, but Ruth seemed bothered by other things, the current project. Edith has been asking for updates. Where are we on the presentation? What about the merchandise? I heard we got it in yesterday, but you hadn't brought it up. Wait, no, I can just ask. Jonah. One hand left my mug of its own accord and reached out to grab Ruth's wrist, drawing her attention back to me. It's under control. It definitely wasn't What's the rush anyway? The presentation will be fine. It definitely would not. The product meets specifications and everything will go smoothly. It didn't and it would be a disaster. Ruth grimaced, shaking her hand from my grip, her eyes flashing an impossible color of the inside of a void before returning to their normal boring hazel. What the fuck? She scurried off down the hall frantic, but I was still focused on the eye change. I wish the encounter with Ruth had been the strangest thing I encountered today, but everyone kept bombarding me with questions about a project that I didn't own. Sure, Edith had put me in charge of a few things, but it wasn't my project. I dodged and weaved around the hallways, trying my best to stay in my office unless it was absolutely necessary. A lot of my time was spent avoiding people rather than doing actual work, but at this point, I didn't care. I was fucking terrified, and not just because of that damn salt candle. In the last 30 minutes, I had been grabbed, followed, and screamed at by multiple different employees. I just needed to go to the damn bathroom, and it was at the other end of the hall. What the fuck did I do? It would be part of Edith's ongoing tactics to try and get me to quit or just take everything on my shoulders. But this seemed different, dire. Head tucked, I shuffled my feet and burst into the bathroom with a sigh of relief. But now that I was there, the mixture of fear and adrenaline had taken away the need to pee. We fucking need this. Everything is going to fall apart. I stared in the mirror as Serenity came out of one of the stalls. My entire body locked up as I watched her approach the sink next to me. If you had just held the damn candle, it would have been fine. For as long as Serenity had been trying to talk to me this morning, she had an unusually calm demeanor. I also just didn't know what the fuck she was talking about, because fuck if I was going to touch an object that seemed to be following me. What-s the candle, Serenity? It-s fucking creepy. When Serenity didn't answer, washing her hands but her gaze never leaving mine, I let out a deep sigh. Explain it to me, because I don't understand. She shook off her hands and turned to me in a way that made her seem inhuman, her eyes flooded with black until I could even see the outline of her irises. My first instinct was to step back, but something kept me rooted in that spot, waiting for her to make a move. All those strange satanic dances I'd watch her do in our living room were starting to make sense. If you had just given in, we only needed one more. I cocked my head to the side, trying to remember to breathe. Hyperventilating right now seemed like a terrible idea. One more what? One more soul. She didn't, I swallowed, trying to wrap my head around Serenity's words. Souls for what? Deadline-s today, and we needed one more soul. All you had to do was touch the damn thing and we would have been fine. But you had to be selfish, so uptight, and now they were coming to collect. My feet finally listened to me, and I shrunk back until my hand was scrambling for the doorknob to the bathroom. Who-s they, Serenity? What have you done? Everyone has a price. This was Edith's, but this year didn't work out the way it was supposed to. He said we have to make a trade of equal value, or he'll come to collect. Who? I racked my brain for answers. Serenity and I had gotten along well enough to become roommates, but I was beginning to realize that I didn't know her like I thought. The Crossroads Demon. Why the fuck are you playing with demons? It was the first set of words out of my mouth, but didn't match the warring emotions beneath the surface. Demons, ghosts, devils, etc. had never been my friend. I was still technically terrified of the dark, and my roommate just told me that she had been playing with demons. You could really believe that this shoddy place of an office had any chance of succeeding, did you? You had to have thought it was weird. Why are you telling me all of this? Serenity was still as a statue, creating an eerie aura between us. I wanted to move, to push out into the hallway and lock myself in my office, or run down to the warehouse and hole up with Jonah. There is no getting out. A frown replaced the fearful expression that had been settled on my face before. I am not part of this. You are. You re one of the things he wanted to trade. Cadden caught me halfway out the bathroom door and dragged me to the warehouse, shutting the door behind us and turning the lock. I thought I was freaked, but the look of horror plastered on that beautiful man's face told me that this problem went way farther than me. His hands started flying down my sides, digging in my pockets. If this had been any other moment, I would have been thoroughly aroused by the way his fingers kept brushing sensitive spots. Instead, it heightened the panic. Cadden, he froze, one hand cupping my ass, and the other so far down my back pocket he might as well have been cupping that cheek also. Bring us your keys, we have to go? Go where? I removed his hands and held onto them, searching his eyes for an explanation. I had no idea what he had seen, but if it was anything like what I had seen in the bathroom, Jonah bounded round the corner, stopping in his tracks as the strange position Cadden had me in. What the fuck is going on? I heard some. Apparently something weird is going on upstairs. Cadden nodded frantically, pushing me toward the garage door. No more questions. Let us go. I opened my mouth to protest, but shut it again as he nearly kicked Jonah to follow suit. Something is wrong with half the staff. Eyes black. Something out of supernatural. I pushed back against Cadden, effectively stopping his pursuit of the outside inches from the back door. Serenity said they were coming for us. Jonah saddled up behind me, his hands falling to my waist as he stared at Cadden. We were in this strange, confused state, Cadden still hella freaked. He looked more freaked than I felt, and I wondered what he had seen. Who-s they? Jonah asked, his voice rough. I think he was beginning to panic as well. All that army training and years of being quick to act starting to come together. I leaned back against Jonah and shook my head, my eyes becoming glassy with tears. I don't fucking know, and it scares the shit out of me. It did. Watching Serenity become something out of a haunted house was terrifying, but knowing that my fears weren't entirely unfounded was worse. Cadden closed the distance between him and the door and began frantically jerking it, but the stubborn thing wouldn't move. I knew for a fact that the handle was never supposed to lock from the inside, which meant that it had been tampered with. Guys," he yelled back at us. "I know this is like every B-horror movie, but I can get the door opened. The only way out is the front door." I heard the boys yelling about something, both of their bodies pressed against my side, hands caressing my neck and face, but I could seem to SNA. P out of whatever panic I had fallen into. Except, it didn't feel like panic. It felt like I was trapped. I refused to believe that the trapped feeling had anything to do with the satanic forces running amok in our building. "Rose, baby, come back to us, please." Cadden sounded almost desperate as he rounded my side, cupping my face in his hands and angling my chin upward so that our eyes met. I could find the words to speak, but his touch was slowly bringing me back. Jonah had one hand drawing small circles between my shoulder blades, his chest still pressed against my side as he buried his face into my hair. "Rose," a deep breath left me as I found myself back in the present, in their arms, my entire body trembling with the panic that had been staved off by whatever weird shit had just taken place. Cadden didn't wait for me to catch my breath as he dove in and captured my lips, drawing an embarrassing moan from me. Our hips pressed together, and I could feel the bulge between his legs grow with interest as he shoved his tongue between my lips. Jonah pressed himself farther into my side, finding the side of my neck with his mouth. My body trembled with an entirely different feeling, pure pleasure, almost making me forget that serenity had nearly sacrificed me to whatever evil power was running around. Almost. I wiggled away from their devious mouths, trying to catch my breath. "I am good." Jonah snorted, his voice a little huskier than usual. "You re not good. There's some satanic shit going on out there. No one is good." I wriggled further out of their hold, now able to see the worried expressions lurking beneath the lust. Jonah wasn't wrong. I wasn't good. After everything I had seen and heard, I was terrified. So terrified that I didn't completely believe that these two men weren't also part of the problem. My eyes drifted between the two of them as they stood nearly shoulder to shoulder, waiting for me to say something or continue what Cadden had started. As much as I wanted more of that, it just wasn't the time. Serenity said something else. The words tumbled from my mouth before I could stop them, both of their eyebrows rising in surprise. Cadden didn't seem as interested as I thought he should have, but I dismissed it as I relayed all of the information I did know, everything about the Crossroads demon and what was going on upstairs. I even added the little I knew about Serenity's literature tastes in our apartment. Jonah's taut tensed as I continued. She said that they only needed one more soul. Their silence told me that they didn't believe much of what I said or why Serenity would tell me anything after her behavior the past few days. I threw my hands up in defeat. She said the demon would trade everything he has worked for, all of that, for me. Again, nothing. I wasn't sure what else I needed to say to get them to believe me or do something that would take us away from the crazy. Neither man moved, but I noticed how shifty Jonah was, the way his attention kept shifting to Cade. And then to me. I waited for him to spit out whatever was bothering him. "Rose, there is something you should know." I nodded, offering him to continue. Last night with the candle I shivered, wondering where Jonah was taking this conversation. I saw Cadden clicked his tongue at him. "She doesn't need to know that." His voice was barely above a hiss, pure anger in his eyes as he spit out his words. "He touched it." Jonah blurted out. Both hands flew to my mouth as I gasped in horror, staring at Cadden for an explanation. But he didn't give one. Jonah did. It was like a stone, wouldn't move. He kept kicking it under the sheets. I watched him get up and move the thing. I shook my head, mumbling through my fingers. "Wait," we moved to the couch. "So did the candle," Jonah added. That didn't make sense either. My hands dropped to my sides as I stepped a little closer to Jonah. It seemed safer. It wasn't there in the morning. "I didn't touch it," Cadden interrupted. He seemed awfully his patent smile absent from the situation. "Why would you say it like that?" Instinctively, I stepped closer to Jonah again. Jonah nodded as he continued the story, turning his full attention to Cadden. The way his body was angled made it seem like he was trying to protect me. "You didn't mean to, sure. You picked up with your hands covered. Until it slipped and you tried to catch it." Silence filled the room as I peered around Jonah's wide shoulders, watching as an unnatural smile tried to hide in Cadden's bland expression. Another gasp left me, the bitter taste of his lips still on mine. "You re one of the souls." He opened his mouth, probably to lie to me again, but I beat him to it. "Fuck, what are we doing in here, Cadden?" More silence. I wrung my hands together, and then Cadden relaxed his shoulders, that smile he had been trying so hard to hide spilling across his face. He closed the distance between us, his hands falling to my shoulders. "You re quite stupid, you know?" I shuddered beneath his toque, wondering how I could have let him touch me. thinking that two men were actually interested in you. You re lucky, but your luck isn't that great. Cadden, I hated that my voice trembled. He just laughed at me. Hun, I haven't been cadden since you fucking met me. Being Edith's offspring didn't spring any red flags for you, I stuttered while that thought ran through my head. Jonah ripped me from Cadden's hands, but there wasn't anywhere to go. He held me protectively against a stack of boxes a few feet away from Cadden. A little attention and you were so excited. Really should have fucked you first. My body tensed as I leaned back against Jonah's chest. He whispered something like "Don't resist" in my ear before essentially throwing me over his shoulder as he barreled in the opposite direction of the back door. An exit I hadn't seen before. That also didn't really seem like an exit. With the way that Jonah was fumbling with lock, I was pretty sure we weren't supposed to exit this way. We burst out into the cool air, Jonah shifting me back to my feet as we whirled around to face Cadden standing at the edge of the place we had just escaped from. He cackled, throwing his head back before glaring at the both of us with that smile again. If you think that by leaving you'll be safe, think again, sweetheart. Why the fuck would I come back? I growled out at him. My confidence was shot to shit, but Jonah standing behind me definitely helped. Cadden smiled wider, placing both hands on the archway, and leaned forward, his head poked just outside but no other part of his body past the threshold. Because Serenity isn't as tied up in this as you think. I blinked a few times, trying to fathom that my roommate hadn't been an ass because she wanted to. She's innocent. Cadden's voice came again. The door swung shut, the audible sound of a lock hitting my ears. Terror and guilt settled in my gut as I stumbled back into Jonah's arms again. My phone rang and I answered it without thinking. Cadden's voice lipping through the earpiece. If you want to come back in, all you have to do is ask, sweetheart. But I will say there are a lot of scrumptious souls left in here. Take your time, but I just don't really think you want to. I wasn't sure what the heck was going on, but it had been 2 days of glorious silence in my apartment as we tried to figure out a plan. Well, more of me figuring out a plan and Rose being terrified that that damn Candle or Cadden was going to make an appearance. Fuck him. Fuck him all the way to hell and back for using us like that. Calling the police had warranted a few laughs, so I called in a favor with one of my military friends. I was fucking desperate at this point not to lose Rose the way I did my sister. Granted, I hadn't lost my sister to sinister forces, but it still felt like my life was spiraling out of control yet again. My favor, Spencer Livington, was one hell of a dude to have on our side. He was as crazy as he was useful, and I never wanted him mad at me for any reason. I had called him yesterday, and Spencer had told me 24 hours. That window was drawing to a close, so we needed to get a move on back to the office to meet him there. I ventured into the bedroom, my expression falling as it met Rose's withered form. She had been out of sorts, in between tears, in a general state of distress for the past 2 days. Now she was curled up against the headboard, knees tucked into her chest, her eyes a dull shade of gray and unfocused. My heart broke the longer I watched until I closed the distance between us and brought her out of her thoughts with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Baby, you need to eat something. We have to go back in there, don't we? Those distant eyes stared up at me, shedding exhausted tears. I nodded. Eventually. I have something we could try, but I am just waiting till he gets here. She raised an eyebrow to ask who he was, and I complied. A buddy of mine, says he'll scope out the place. He's a lot more in tune with the demonic forces, Oh, he's a cook. I didn't answer that question as I placed a little kiss on her nose and then one on either cheek before taking her lips with mine. Rose leaned into the embrace, sighing against me. Her shoulders relaxed and she seemed to grow warm beneath my teeth as I pulled back. For a momentary flash, I could read her expression. Attributing it to her general distressed state, I didn't mention it. We were both strung out, ready to give up if we didn't find another way to save Serenity, although I had my suspicions that she wasn't all that innocent. And I was borderline out of my mind with worry that Rose was going to cave in to her own mind and she'd be lost forever. I hoped Spencer would be able to figure something out. Spencer showed up just shy of 24 hours from when we talked yesterday. The bastard didn't waste a minute. He threw me a wild grin, waving like we weren't dealing with demonic energies and soul-stealing Satan worshippers or whatever they were. Didn't believe a lick of what you were saying over the phone, but I can feel it here. The demonic presence is big. Spencer gestured to the front door, yanking at the handle. Should have guessed that it was locked. What are you doing? Rose shrieked from my side. Her voice sounded off and I could only imagine what she was feeling as Spencer just shrugged. We have to go inside. You know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that one of Spencer's ideas was walking inside that place crawling with soulless humans. I opened my mouth to say, as such, when the door inched open, Cadden's head popping into view. He threw us all a sinister smile before his attention fell on Rose. You back, with recruits, you shouldn't have. Spencer was standing there one moment and then crumpled on the ground the next. There had been no scream, no indication that the man had left this earth, but the way his eyes bugged out was pretty damn convincing. Rose stiffened beside me but didn't move. Years of training had me staying quiet, but I wanted to rag. Be it Cadden and I would have had I known that I would have a chance. Cadden smacked his lips, licking his fingers as he continued to stare at Rose. His soul was pretty nasty. Babe, why don't you come inside? I am not your babe. That was just a ruse to get my soul. Rose huffed, folding her arms across her chest. The fear seemed to disappear, replaced with a sense of annoyance, misplaced as it was. Cadden barked out a laugh. Are you sure? Come inside. I think it would be great for us to make a deal. Rose hesitated for a moment, stealing a glance at me before following Cadden inside. She stepped over Spencer's body without so much as another thought, which seemed strange, and parked herself in one of the waiting room chairs. Serenity was in the opposite corner, balled up, tears streaking down her cheeks. It's all your fault, Rose. You brought this shit here. Regardless of her innocence, she really seemed innocent. Once again, I moved to speak, but Cadden and Rose seemed to be in a silent standoff. 2 days ago, Rose had been terrified of that man. She had been adamant about saving her innocent roommate. Now, it was almost like there was heat in their expressions. Isn't it about time you gave up the game? It's over, Rose. Come home already. Rose shook her head, mumbling, I don't know what you talking about. You've had a lot of fun with your human boyfriend. It's time to come home. Silence filtered into the area between us four as I tried to understand what Cadden had just said. Human boyfriend, the office was strangely quiet, and I wondered where everyone else was hiding. It didn't make any sense. I looked to Rose for an explanation, still trying to swallow the guilt that Spencer was lying out on the pavement because of me. But instead of the fear I expected to see, a matching sinister smile spread across her lips, her voice dropping a few octaves, and her eyes filled with a midnight void. But it's so fun in this woman's body, and I am not ready to go home yet. B-rated horror. Movie for the win. There was no other way to describe what the fuck was unfolding in front of me. Rose was part of this whole shindig. That wasn't even possible. She had seemed so terrified of that damn salt candle and Cadden and all of the sinister things going on in this office. And then she turned out to be one of them. None of my military training had prepared for me this type of shit. Guns and bombs and traitors I could handle. But ghosts and devilish beings, count me out. I took a calculated step back, Rose and Cadden spouting off about their current forms and how it had been so much fun to pretend to be human. That was really fucking with me. I hadn't suspected anything when I was hired. None of this added up. My eyes darted around the room, wondering what my best escape was other than the front door. I was sure that someone had locked it, but it was my only chance if I was going to survive. 2 feet from my escape, a woman stopped me. Normally, I would have bowled right through her, but everything about her presence was familiar, from her hair, to the hand on my chest, to that fresh scent she always wore. Callie, I backed up, staring at the woman in front of me. She was a few years older than when I lost her, but she was undoubtedly my sister, Callie. Emotions bubbled up in my chest as I tried to get a grip on the life that I was slowly losing control of. I watched you die. How the fuck, she smirked, although there was betrayal in those eyes as she walked around me and settled beside Rose. Rose and Cadden had stopped arguing, watching me for some unknown reason. You don't remember anything? Callie asked. I shook my head, still trying to understand how my sister was standing in front of me. Had Rose stolen her soul too? Was all this some hallucination to fuck with my head? Your greed killed me, Jonah. My greed? Rose snorted, Cadden doing his best not to burst out in laughter, but Callie's expression remained serious. You not my brother. You not even human, but you wanted to be. You took my brother from me. Frowning, I looked to Rose for an explanation, as if she'd have one, because that didn't sound like me. I was her brother. It was the only existence I knew. Rose let out a deep sigh, disappointed by my reaction. Jonah, you need souls to stay in that form, so you took the one closest to you. Her brother S, and then you took Callie S, and for a while it was enough, but the strain on this form was too great. You needed more. None of this shit is true. Cadden threw his hands up but didn't say anything. Rose continued, It is. You were never meant to remain on Earth, but you chose this path and we followed. What do you mean you followed? I wrung my hands together, beads of sweat beginning to run down my back. Rose didn't look like she was joking, but there had been too many twists and turns already. I didn't know who to believe. Cadden found his voice, jabbing Rose in the side. If we going to be spouting all the truth, can we at least give him all of it? Yo. Her name isn't even Jonah. We stood there in silence, our gazes flitting back and forth between each other while I started a mini freak-out inside my head. What kind of mindfuck is this? I had heard of PTSD and hallucinations happening to men who returned from overseas, but this was a bit much. Apparently Cadden was done waiting for me to digest the mountain of fuckery they kept throwing at me as he stepped forward, pointing at me like I had done them all wrong. You re the goddamn Grim Reaper, and you've been taking souls without even knowing it. You wanted to be human. We knew it was stupid, but you wanted it so bad. You wanted to know how it felt. So here it is. How was it? I stole all of your souls, we re-demons. You didn't steal anything. There were a few casualties. Edith, God hated that bitch anyway, and Serenity, well, but I walked out of the office without another word, careful to step over the lifeless body of my friend. No one stopped me, which somehow reaffirmed the shit they were telling me. Regardless, I wasn't going to stay and believe any of it. It could be real. Rose ran after me, spouting more nonsense. Find your scythe so we can go home. It's the only reason we still here, and before you ask, no, you didn't tell any of us where you put it. You wanted to play a game, we played. Find the scythe. I want to go home. She disappeared back into the building, and I kept walking, because what was I supposed to say to that? The past I knew was filled with training, an overseas deployment, and a beloved sister I had lost. Rose and Cadden were telling me a wildly different story. A story where I was a fucking selfish entity that just had to see what happened when I became home. There was no fucking way any of that shit was real. I wasn't even going to address the fact that Callie had seemed tangible in that goddamn office, as if she hadn't ever truly died. Going to sleep would clear things up for sure. And then I'd pack up my shit and move to the next town because fuck if I was going to stay here. He didn't remember us, and it kind of hurt. It hurt that the man I used to love didn't remember me. That all of our adventures were wasting away in the wind because the Grim Reaper just had to be human. Cadden came up behind me, his hands finding my shoulders as he squeezed lightly. Mania, it'll be fine. He'll come back. I shivered at the use of my demonic name, a name I hadn't heard in years, as I turned and faced him. Apollyon, this isn't the first time he has tried something so reckless. It is just the first time he hasn't remembered it. I turned to face my favorite demon, wanting to fall back into Rose's human thoughts so that I could experience the attraction all over again. Did you see the way he looked at us? He basically fled. You know he is packing. He still thinks he is human. Apollyon gave me a small smile as he pressed a soft kiss to the bridge of my nose. He'll be back. What are we going to do about the souls though? It is getting stuffy in here. I managed to shrug. I didn't care. I just wanted my Grim Reaper back. And Serenity, are you going to stop torturing her? I don't want her soul. I just didn't like the way she treated Rose. I stepped around Apollyon and moved toward the back corner where Serenity was still holed up in one of the cubicles, trembling from the fear we had instilled in her. My power included erasing her memories, and it was the only reason I even thought about releasing her into the wild. My power was also the bane of my existence because it was partly the reason the Grim Reaper didn't fucking remember anything. Too bad my power didn't work in reverse. I crouched in front of Serenity, reaching a hand out to pet her head. The girl whipped her face toward me, spit flying from her lips before I could even register that she had moved. I dodged the saliva missile, Serenity falling flat on the carpet as I siphoned her soul without thinking. Apollyon belted out a laugh as I stood up and rubbed my hands on my pants. What happened to not wanting her soul? I don't like being disrespected. Now let us go get Jonah before he completely forgets who he is. How are you going to make him remember? I have my ways. I grabbed the salt candle that had plagued Rose's existence. It was the only reason I had remembered who I was. He is not going to touch that, Apollyon started, even as he grabbed his coat and followed me out the front door. I scowled. He wouldn't even know it is there. He has to touch it of his own accord, babe. The salt candle was a piece of our home. It wasn't salt at all, but a piece of molten rock that had crystallized. It held memories, thoughts, and power from our past. With one touch, we could remember everything we tried to forget. However, when a human touched it, it stole their soul. Edith's price for praying to hell for another chance at her failed business was souls. The Grim Reaper wanted to be human, and at the cost of Edith's life, he granted her wish. For nearly 3 years, her business thrived, until she upped feeding the Grim Reaper souls. Granted, this Jonah could even remember the contract, but Cadden had, and he knew that without the souls, releasing the Grim Reaper on Earth would have been a shit show. It was time to go home because fuck if I was going to explain to the devil why the Grim Reaper had evolved into chaos on planet Earth and ruined the balance of the universe. Let us find him and then his scythe. We were running out of time. There were too many images running through my head of killing poor, nameless humans in the name of hell. The weapon Rose had been talking about, expertly wielded in my hands. Each slash of my scythe rewarded me with screams and terror that tore at my soul. But if I was to believe Rose and Cadden, I didn't have one. It was too bad I didn't believe any word that had come from their lips. They had lied to me over the past few years. I truly believed that I was this human, this Jonah. I could think of any other possibility at this point, and I could understand. If that was part of the game or that everything those demons was just a lie to get me to crack, reason told me there was an inkling of truth to their stories. My head told me they just wanted me to touch that damn candle to fall prey to their whims. Another distant memory of shared passionate moments between us three flitted through my mind, but I didn't try to hold on to them. For those to be true, I had to be the reason that every one of my coworkers had now lost their souls so I could play the role of a human. For those to be true, I had to be the reason my sister was dead. For those to be true, I had to be the Grim Reaper. That's bullshit. I am not that selfish. I had spent all of 15 minutes stuffing what seemed important into 2 bags, emptying the safe, and taking off in my car. I'd figure out how to break the lease later. Doctors had told me the symptoms of PTSD after retiring from the army, but hallucinating at this magnitude didn't seem to fit the bill, yet it was the only explanation for the crazy. After draining the $700 in my bank account and pulling another $1,000 from my safe, I would be able to survive for a few months with my connections if I played my cards right. I had done with less in the army. Push come to shove, I'd sell the car. The problem was, I didn't know how demons tracked humans, what set them off, what told them my location. I'd worry about that later too. Right now, I just needed to put as much distance between myself and that doctor's office. The scenery moved from the bustling city to suburbs to dirt roads, silence following me as my tires kicked up dust and gravel, until I was panting for a drink a few hours after taking off. I pulled into the lone gas station off the interstate, hoping they had water and maybe a sandwich. An outhouse was asking for too much, but I saw a few bushes I could hide behind. After emptying my bladder, I waltzed into the store. Welcome to the words caught in the kid's throat as I glared at him stomping through the plaque. Like I had a stick up my ass. I didn't but I was pissed that this was happening. For once in my life, I had hoped I could settle in with a nice girl and guy, but demons. I grabbed a few bottles of water, a sandwich that was on the verge of molding, and a bag of chips. It hold me until the next stop. I dropped it on the counter, glaring at the kid as he rang up the items, and I shoved the cash at him. He trembled beneath my stare and dangled the change over my open palm, fingers grazing my skin. For a brief second, it was like time had stopped, and then I was yanking the kid against the counter, sniffing at his neck like a rabid animal as the abandoned change clattered to the countertop. Power surged through me as I licked up the side of his neck. Your soul smells so fucking good. It was like a different voice erupted from me. A second persona itching to be at the surface as I continued to sniff at the kid. Please, sir, just take whatever you want. Look, the second voice CA. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this telling story video, please do not forget to give us a like, comment, share, and subscribe.